If you have ever tried to roll out a new initiative in the business or attack a new project or go after a new marketing series, and you felt that gap between like we announced it, we said it, but no one's actually doing it, this new series on the podcast is for you. Because on today's episode, I am handing the mic to my dear friend, mentor, Dave Garrison, to walk you through what he calls the mindset of buy-in. So it's just Dave on the show with you, walking you through buy-in. And Dave has spent years inside leadership teams who are great at setting priorities, but constantly run into what he calls the quote unquote yes boss problem. People that say yes in the room, then quietly drift back to old habits and patterns. And in this overview kickoff episode, he breaks down exactly what buy-in really is, why it's more than agreement, and what happens inside your company culture when leaders confuse compliance with commitment. So he's going to give you an overview of the 4 buy-in blockers and how they quietly erode execution on every team of every size at every level, including high performing teams. And so this is part 1 of our special buy-in blockers takeover series with Dave. So listen closely, share it with your friends, share it with your team, share it with your clients, and get ready to see your next project, your next mile marker, your next initiative through in a completely different lens. So let's get into the first episode.
I'm Dave Garrison, author of USA Today best-selling book, The Buying Advantage. It's ranked in the top 10 on Amazon in management and workplace culture. So sometimes I hear, hey, Dave, I got plenty to do. I don't have any time for culture. I'll get to that when I get there. And meanwhile, I got to get stuff done. Hey, if you're one of those people, stick around because we're going to discover how Peter Drucker, the professor of management, was right. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. Because what I've learned is it doesn't matter what your plan or goals are if you don't have a team with certain qualities to get there. But what are those qualities? I'm so excited. I'm getting ahead of myself. First, a shout out to my friend, George. I'm excited he invited me to take over his podcast, and I hope you find it worth your time, because if you find yourself out of time, like most of us do, to get to the really important stuff, no matter how hard you work, how many hours you put in, you feel like you're hardly making a dent in the mountain of stuff to get done, and you don't get to the important stuff, stick around because we've got some ideas on how you can address that. But let's start. The title of the book is The Buy-in Advantage. So what is this buy-in stuff all about? Let's start there. And so I think about buy-in really simply as the difference between what you observe Friday night at the high school football stadium, where people are all excited and bringing their all to their team and winning in a single goal. And I compare that to Monday morning where people go, how was your weekend? Fine. How was your weekend? Fine. And people don't bring their whole selves. It's like they leave their personality and all their experience in the parking lot. It's not that they're not nice. People are nice. People will do what you ask them to do, but they're not bringing their whole selves. They're not bought in. And what I've learned is the data says that 50% of employees have their eye looking out the window trying to find another job. And when half the people on your team are trying to find another job, they're probably not totally focused on what it is that's most important to get done. So buy-in looks like people are totally energized about what's going on. So it really matters. This whole buy-in thing really matters because work is hard enough for a leader. Work is hard enough without having to drag other people along. Here are a few examples of where if you don't have buy-in, it really gets hard. If you're the leader and you have team members that you have to keep chasing and following up on, that says there's not buy-in or not alignment on what's most important to get done. I've heard that complaint so many times from leaders. Another one is like you're sitting there and the person next to you is not bought in and they're daydreaming and doing other stuff. and you feel like you're having to pick up the load. Or another question is, why would you bother to work hard if it's okay just to be daydreaming on the job? If nobody calls them on it, if nobody expects anything better, why should you put in the extra effort? And so this whole lack of buy-in is sort of contagious. And if you're on a team when somebody leaves because they're not bought in, the burden falls on you to not just do your work, but do the work of the other person as well. And there's nothing fun about that because you can never get enough done because you can't realistically do two people's jobs. And so buy-in really matters because the costs never show up in the metrics. They never show up in the weekly meetings, but it's really costly to organizations when people don't buy in, and it just drags down the entire culture. So here's what it looks like when there isn't buy-in. It's not only a drag on you, but it looks like priorities don't get done. Like the goals we set don't quite get accomplished, or they don't get accomplished on time, or they don't get accomplished the way you expected them to do. So all the time we hear from leaders, hey, I asked them to do it and I check up 2 weeks later and they either haven't started or are not doing it the right way. And there's nothing good about that. It's defeating for the person who feels like they've let the boss down, and defeating for the boss who feels like I can't rely on anybody else. When the boss feels like they can't rely on anybody else, then they don't delegate, and then their work is overloaded and they can't get to the important stuff. So here's what we see when there isn't buy-in. Targets are missed. Time is wasted following up. Meetings. Oh my goodness. Meetings just go on and on and on without a point, without a structure. It's really frustrating because when there isn't buy-in, it's like no matter how hard you work, it doesn't all get done. But here's the good news. There are plenty of healthy organizations who have high levels of buy-in. People are aligned on what's important. They agree on the priorities because they were part of co-creating them. People take time to discuss how to get the work done, not just the work to get done. Too many companies have meetings where people walk away and say, okay, I'll do it, but we don't have agreement on how the work will get done. And that's especially true when important projects require multiple departments or multiple people. It looks great when you have buy-in because people connect as human beings. You're not just there as an accounts receivable clerk. People are truly interested in who you are and what you have to share. They want to know about your experience. So, yeah, the work is still hard. There's a lot to do, but it's so much more satisfying when you can accomplish things together as opposed to everybody pulling in a different direction. So here's the really good news. It doesn't take fancy software. It doesn't take machines. It doesn't take AI. It doesn't take expensive training. It's not hard, but it requires intention and attention from everybody involved. And so we're going to explore this together over the next couple of podcasts. But before we find out what really works, we're going to look at 4 mistakes that are made all the time, despite leaders' best efforts, despite people's best intentions. These 4 mistakes show up a lot. And the first one is purpose drift. Purpose drift. We lose sense of how to use purpose in the business, what our purpose is, and how it's so important. The second is blind tasks. That's like the yes, boss, I'll do it, with no appreciation for how it relates to the bigger picture or who else I'm going to rely on or why it really matters. The third is lone wolf leadership. Man, you've seen this before. I have too, where someone just goes off on their own and leads the way on the stuff that they think is most important with little coordination of other people. It doesn't work. It's a blocker to buy in. Well intended, but it doesn't work. And the fourth blocker we're going to examine is one-way communications. This is the you say what you believe and the person just goes on as if you hadn't said anything environment, and that doesn't create buy-in. In fact, it just alienates people and makes people wonder, why'd I share anything? So those are four blockers. We're going to look at those four blockers over the next couple of weeks and call them out so that you can be aware of how people in your organization, or honestly, maybe even you, might be using one of these four blockers or creating one of these four blockers unintentionally. So stick around. And over the next couple of sessions, we'll talk about those blockers and then move on to what great leaders do to inspire everyone to give it their all. So thanks for joining. See you real soon as we dive into what the heck is purpose drift on the next episode and how to get back on track. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for listening to the Buy-in Blockers Takeover series from my incredible friend, Dave Garrison. I had to throw an outro on every one of these episodes because you have to know Dave, you have to know his team, and you have to use his resources. If you are an entrepreneur at every level, whether you're just starting out, maybe you have a 1099, maybe you have a team of 3, maybe you have a team of 10, maybe you have a team of 50, everything that Dave speaks and Dave teaches is applicable and so powerful for you to use. And so at the offset of this, I have to tell you, you need to get a copy of his book, The Buy-in Advantage. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it on their website, garrisongrowth.com. But I use this book as a manual. I use the tools in it. I use it to run meetings. I use it to help clients with processes and priorities. And this book has become one of my top books when it comes to building and scaling a company, which is why I asked Dave to come take over the podcast and do this series. So get yourself a copy of The Buy-in Advantage. And I wanted to throw this out there because I wrangled them into a corner and I know how valuable what he does is for everybody. And so they are running a special training called the Leadership Sprint, which they will give you access to. You can come live, you can ask Dave questions. And in order to do that, you need to shoot Dave a message on LinkedIn. So he's easy to find. It's Dave Garrison on LinkedIn. I'll have it all linked in the show notes, and shoot them a message that says Leadership Sprint. Let them know what your takeaway was from the podcast, and they will send you a link to the training. And I'm also going to throw this out there. They might get mad at me, but if there's anything that resonates with you when it comes to leadership, when it comes to buy-in, when it comes to managing your team, when it comes to priority, I highly, highly encourage you to reach out to their team with any questions. Their email is engage@garrisongrowth.com, and they're absolutely incredible. So they are here to help you on your buy-in journey, to help you build your team, scale your team, and take your company and bring that vision to life. And so it's a resource. I invite you to use it, but I wanted to throw this outro on all the episodes. So I hope you enjoy this entire series with Dave Garrison, and make sure you reach out, and we'll see you in the next episode.